Galatians chapter 5 and verse 22 tells us that the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. Did you realize this fruit is the result of God's presence within us? Just think, all of us who know Jesus as Lord and have God's Spirit dwelling within us, we should be producing this fruit in our lives. And not just some of this fruit, but we should be producing all of it. I want to spend a minute or so talking about the fourth one on this list. Love, joy, peace, patience. I want to talk about patience. Some Bible translations use other words like long-suffering or forbearance instead of using the word patience. But if we go back to the original Greek word in this passage, which is macrothumia, it actually means patient endurance, or it means to bear long with the frailties of offenses, injuries, and provocations of others without murmuring, complaining, or resentment. In other words, this type of patience doesn't just refer to the ability to wait, but it even refers to how we act while we wait. If you've ever been around children much at all, you know that kids really have a hard time grasping this concept of time. They also have a hard time grasping the idea of practicing patience. They want what they want when they want it. And they will cry, complain, and get mad if they don't get what they want when they want it at that moment. As limited human beings, we can't really comprehend God's perspective on time. We too seem to want everything now. And we often fail to recognize that God's timing is so much better for us. We may be as impatient as children, but it is clear that God's timing is perfect. And we should accept that. When God is ready, He will do what needs to be done. There's some peace that we can find in knowing that. There's a verse that has really spoken volumes to me over the last little while, and it's found in the book of Isaiah, chapter 60, and verse 22, the last portion of that. And it says, "When the time is right, I, the Lord, will make it happen." Reading that one day, it jumped out at me and it stuck with me. When we're going through a difficult season, it's often so easy to focus on our feelings or focus on what we don't have. But this verse reminds us that God is working for us and that His timing is what we need to submit to, not that of our own. In closing, there's a story in the book of Genesis, chapter 29, verses 15 through 30. I encourage you to read that. It's a story about Jacob and Rachel. Jacob worked and he waited 7 years to marry Rachel. And after he was tricked, he then agreed to work 7 more years for her. You see, the most important goals and desires are worth working and waiting for. Movies and television today have created this illusion that people have to only wait about 30 minutes or maybe an hour to solve their problems or to get what they want. But don't be trapped into thinking that the same is true in our real life. You see, patience is hardest when we need it the most. But it is the key, I believe, to achieving God's best in our lives. There's a lot of people in this season that we find ourselves in now. A lot of people are getting tired of this season of life. And with the stay-at-home orders and not being able to go about as normal, a lot of people are getting very much impatient during this season. Maybe you find yourself there as well. And oftentimes we begin to murmur. We begin to complain or even resenting the fact of having to stay home and stay away from physically gathering with other people, our friends, and maybe those in our church family. But let me encourage you to lean into this season and really capitalize on it. In other words, allow God's patience to reign in your life and even in your home. Use this time to really seek the Lord. And while you're seeking the Lord, listen. Try to discern what the Lord is saying to you. What's the Lord saying to your family? What's the Lord saying to our church? There's often clarity in silence and isolation that we cannot discern in the middle of noise and busyness. So I encourage you to let God do in you what He wants to do. And I remind you that what God does in you, He ultimately wants to do through you for someone else. Believe me, God wants to do something powerful in your life during this season. So be patient and let God do what He wants to do. And I want to leave you with this verse again that has been so on point for me. Isaiah chapter 60, verse 22. When the time is right, I, the Lord, will make it happen. So let me encourage you to be patient and listen. Discern what God's saying to you and know that God will make it happen. God bless.